recording, so we get going here. There we go. And we got one here that I'm going to admit in. Let them get settled real quick. And
my friend Anita.
all right, welcome everybody to a Free Thinkers Corner. The next in our lineup is Sharon Healy-Yang. Real quick though, before we get started, just like everybody to keep your mics muted and your video off. It keeps down distractions because we are doing Facebook Live as well. So unless you want to show yourself on Facebook Live, you know, with a barking dog or a quick sneeze or something like that, we'd appreciate you keeping that stuff off. Also, where it's getting very, very dark outside, we're supposed to get hit pretty hard here with the thunderstorms in a few minutes, but everything's charged. Everything is, let's hope the Wi-Fi doesn't go out. If not, we're set up on my phone here as well, linked to that. So, but if anything goes wrong, we'll either reschedule or we'll figure out what to do at some point. So without further ado now, we have, like I said, we're speaking tonight with Sharon Healy-Yang. Sharon is passionate about mysteries from the Golden Age, whether in a book or on the screen. Her fascination with mysteries in the 1940s drives her pleasure in crafting novels that recapture the wit, adventure, and suspense of the era. Known on the campus where she, taught, she's now retired, she was known as the lady with the 1940s hats. She has the great fortune to combine her love of literature and film in courses aimed to rekindle that same excitement with her students. Sharon, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
So you're newly retired. Congratulations.
Oh yeah, I love it. I have time to write. I have time to take as much time as I want to read a book. It's not like, oh my God, I have to have Jane Eyre read over the weekend. We do biking, hiking, oh, it's great. I love it. I love it.
I've been retired now for 2.5 years, and of course we started the bookstore, but still it's a whole new ball game. It is nice. I can get up when I want. If it's snowing outside, I can just say, you know what? I'm not going to open the store today. or it's not that busy. I'm going to close early and go home. It is a nice feeling. So you let's see, you taught at you were in the English department at Worcester State University. What were some of the courses that you taught? What were some of the favorite courses that you taught?
Well, I love Renaissance stuff, and I love 19th century British, and I love film. So I actually, there were some classes I created that were a lot of fun. I team taught a class, Witchcraft in Medieval and Renaissance Literature, with my friend, the medievalist Mary Lynn Saul. And it wasn't a laboratory course. We didn't cast spells or anything, but we did look at how witchcraft was perceived in those time periods and how people used it politically to control, keep women in their place, literally to demonize other religious groups or other political groups. It was a fun class. We did everything from Saint Augustine to Shakespeare to Montaigne to the Norse sagas. It was a lot of fun, and the students liked it. And another class I really liked that I developed was Romantic and Victorian Gothic, which is Gothic novels, not Gothic literature, British in the 19th century. And it was really fun again to look at how Gothic has been used to kind of explore what scares people about themselves, about others, about what's going on in their country, their concerns about science or religion. So we had a really good time. My students really seemed to like that. And I taught a film and lit class that and a Shakespeare and film class. And I love those because I would bring together the traditional literature and look at how things like film noir comes out of revenge tragedy, and how Gothic influences modern films, film noir and horror. It was really interesting to see the elements interconnecting and developing, evolving from literature to film. So those are some of the things I really love to do.
Are you practicing Wiccan, or do you do any of that in your?
I'm an Episcopalian, so.
Okay, but you like teaching it and discussing it.
I wasn't teaching people how to be witches, but I was
right.
Perceptions, of people, and how what's really funny is if you go back to the Romans when the Christians came out, the pagans were saying all these things about the Christians, calling them witches and saying they eat babies and they have sex in the middle of the night and they're with demonic forces. And then when the Christians get power, they're saying, well, the pagans are doing all this. And then the Protestants and the Catholics, during the Reformation, are saying that about each other. So it's kind of interesting to see how people sort of use the concept of witchcraft as a club to beat their enemies. And I think that's why, even today we talk about witch hunts, like the communist witch hunts, that you demonize the people you don't like and say they're in league with Satan, whether it's, literally Satan or a satanic type of politician. And rather than saying who they are and talking to them and figuring out what's going on with them, or honestly confronting them and confronting yourself. So I mean, that's really what interested me in that kind of thing. And also I have to add, it's kind of interesting how women traditionally had been, by calling them witches, it was a way to kind of control them. So women, when they did have some kind of power as healers or herbalists, they were, marginalized. Or older women who, had some property or some money or whatever. Again, they get marginalized because they're not obedient, they're not subservient. So it's interesting how it's used socially and politically. So that's what we got into.
When did you realize that was what you were really interested in, the Gothic literature and all that kind of stuff?
Well, the Gothic literature, I grew up on that. My parents had lots of books around the house, and my brother did. So I was reading science fiction, I was reading mysteries, I was reading horror. He'd finish his H.P. Lovecraft and hand it over to me, or he'd finish, and so I got into it that way. And then as far as the sort of the concept of say witchcraft in literature, I was looking at the roles of women and women trying to find power, or trying to find equality, or just trying not to be suppressed in the Renaissance, because I am a Renaissance scholar. And so I found that was a way that you could see that they tried to get around some of the oppressions that were put on them. So that's really how I get into that. And I think the supernatural is fascinating. I've always liked things that were a little bit different. I'd be like Fox Mulder. I want to believe, not I believe, but you got to prove it to me. So that's kind of that.
So what was it about the 1940s that drew you to the 1940s?
Well, part of it was when I was a kid growing up, there were always 1940s movies on TV. And my parents used to watch them, and I would start to watch them. And again, a lot of what I watched, I like the horror movies. So if it had Boris Karloff or Bela Lugosi or Claude Rains, I was there. And I really liked the style. I especially got into Val Lewton's films because they're very impressionistic. They're very suggestive. They're not gory. And I liked that part of the supernatural that is kind of more eerie and haunted than just, like gross or scary in that sense. And then I liked a lot of the mystery films use the same kind of cinematography of the shadows and chiaroscuro, and I love black and white. So it gave it kind of a dreamy, otherworldly scent, and I just sort of loved that world. And I got to talk with my parents about it, and that's how I kept going. And that made me really want to write. I thought, geez, there aren't enough good movies. I think I'll write some stories that would have made good movies back then.
One thing I forgot to mention to those who have joined us in Zoom and on Facebook Live, here on Zoom, if you go ahead and just use the chat box if you have any questions or comments for Sharon, and then I can relay them to her. And then over here on Facebook Live, same thing, just use the comments section and I'll relay any comments or questions to Sharon. So you were, as I mentioned in the introduction, you were known around campus as the lady with the hats. Yep. Yeah, I see that. And you had hats on. Well,
Yeah.
that's you stopped in our store the other day to drop off some books, and I didn't recognize you because you didn't have a hat on.
I was going incognito yesterday.
Yeah. Between the masks and no hat, I didn't
Right,
recognize you.
right. That's right. That's right.
So what's with the hats? What
Why?
yeah.
Well, I mean, part of it is my interest in the 40s. I love the styles. I think they're very attractive. They're very stylish. They're very tailored. They're very attractive. And I love the style. So I said, well, I want to dress like that. I think it looks great. And if other people don't like it, the hell with them. That's their problem, not mine. And so I think I have 136 hats at home here.
So instead of shoes, it's hats for you.
Yeah, although I do have a lot of shoes too. But I'm not quite the Imelda Marcos type. Maybe with the hats, but not the shoes. So yeah, and actually they keep my head warm in the winter and they keep the sun off me. So they also are practical. And it's fun. It's kind sometimes they're kind of icebreakers because people will come up to me and start talking about my hats and say how much they like them. And excuse me. A couple of times I was at the Shakespeare Association convention, and these people I admired, could be intimidated by, famous critics. They come up to me and say, "Oh, I love your hat. Where did you get that? Oh, that's great." So it kind of like opened up a lot of possibilities too.
Mm.
It opened opportunities to talk to people.
It's a good icebreaker.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. Yeah.
You ever go to the Renaissance fairs?
No, I just don't have time. I'm not into Renaissance styles so much, and I'd rather read about it than live it. Any time that
Mhm.
doesn't have indoor plumbing is, out of the question for me.
Now, is your wardrobe as sort of 1940s, 50s as your hats, or
Yeah,
is that for like special occasions or everyday wear?
well, when I go out and work in the garden, I don't
Well, yeah.
like this. But when I was teaching, I always dressed up. I'd have a suit or a dress, or even like if I had pants and a blouse, it would be kind of 40 style. And usually a hat. Sometimes I'd have a hat in the classroom. Sometimes I wouldn't. Um, if you have a suit on, it sort of makes sense to have a hat on. But if you're going in just a blouse and a skirt, it doesn't always. And so sometimes the students would say, "Where's your hat, Dr. Young?" And I'd have to say, "Well, I don't have it on right now, but if you hang around outside my office at 2 o'clock, going home, you'll see it." Although actually, I didn't get home 2 o'clock very often. But yeah, I mean, going to church when I go to a show, and I don't have anything floor length, probably mainly because I don't think there's any place you can wear a floor length dress, and I'm a klutz, so I would be tripping on the hem constantly. But I have some, kind of fancy schmancy dresses that would make Betty Davis and Joan Crawford envious if I strolled past them in those outfits. So yeah, it's
Nice.
my style. It's fun. It's fun.
Did you ever give out extra credit for any students that came in wearing a 40s style, either clothes or hats?
No, I was a real hard ass. They had to. Now you had to work. You had to really earn it. Nobody ever. Although one time I had a friend who she came to my party and a Halloween party, and she had on the fedora and the suit. And I thought, oh wow! I said, oh, you look great, real 1940s look. And then I said, who are you? And then I noticed she had a pin that said, "I love Joan Bennett." And I said, oh, that's you. You came as me. And she said, yes. So
Oh, that's funny. So you mentioned that
yeah.
you mentioned that you're a doctor. You have a PhD in, or what are you a doctor of?
Uh, well, it's called Doctor of Philosophy. I have a PhD in English literature. So, if you're dying, I can't save your life, but maybe I
Right.
could comfort you with words from Duke Vincenzio's, speech on death, something like that. So yeah, PhD in English. Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned some of the movies, some of the TVs and books that sort of
Yeah.
influenced you, but why did you gravitate more towards mysteries instead of sort of the horror thriller? You mentioned H.P. Lovecraft and some more of those horror type
Mhm.
early movies and stuff, but you write mystery books.
Well, I mean, I actually have an unpublished novel that is kind of horror, noir, romance. I know that's a lot of genres in there. Um, so and the fourth novel that I've written in this series, which won't, it won't even go to the publisher for, a couple of years, actually is a ghost story. And it's a ghost story in sort of the 1940s style. So I have written ghost stories or haunting stories, um, but mystery, I guess I don't know why I started with mystery. Maybe part of it is because I read so many mysteries too, and it just seemed a more accessible type of genre for me to come out with. It seemed like there was also more of a market for the type of mystery that I would be interested in writing. It made it, I like to work in the romance, so it made it easier to work in that as well. I think part of the situation too was, again, a lot of the films I watched brought in romance as well as mystery. And I think something else too, growing up, I grew up on what at that time were called Gothic novels. It's not what we would say now, but it was basically a variation on Jane Eyre. So it was people like Victoria Holt and Phyllis A. Whitney and Georgette Heyer and I forget, all those type of people. And that was mystery and romance together. And I think that influenced me. I got started in that genre and I decided I want to set it in the 40s because that's a little more, at the time, it was more accessible for me to get the ambiance and the facts of the time straight. So,
It's great to see, and that's one thing I've learned through this, that there's subgenres of subgenres of genres,
yeah.
and it's almost
Yeah.
infinite. And it's neat to see how you can mix all these together, these mystery and
Yeah.
noir
Yeah.
and supernatural and stuff. But you realize how much of a nightmare it is to shelve these books?
Well, yeah, well, I'm sorry, what can I say? You get like two or three copies from each of us, and you put one copy under each under each
Well,
thing.
there are a couple writers. They have some nonfiction memoirs, poetry stuff. They have some nonfiction New Hampshire related stuff, but he also has the fiction books, and I have him in all three sections.
Yeah,
Um,
that's where they belong. Yeah, yeah, they just fit.
um, so who are some of who's your all-time favorite writer?
Uh, well, I can't pick just one person. There are lots of writers that I really love to read. And then there are some that also are influences on me. So, I mean, as somebody who was an English teacher, I love Elizabeth Gaskell. I love Victorian novelists. I love reading the way they develop characters and the good ones and descriptions. It's like eating beef Wellington. It's very rich.
Mhm.
There's a lot to sink your teeth into, and it's good. Um, and so, and a lot of them, they do have a sense of humor, um, and they have human characters. They really explore those issues. Um, as far as, mystery writers, I actually like a lot of writers that are more from the classic era. So I like Margaret Millar because I like mystery writers who create a great sense of place. So you really feel as if you're there and give you the characters. So I like her. She does that. And she also manages to hit you with a little social criticism when you don't even realize. It's like, oh, yeah, I learned something here. But she's very entertaining and she keeps you going. I like George Harmon Cox. I always say about him, he doesn't have the social critique of Margaret Millar. He's not as dark as David Goodis, but he gives you a really good ride. He gives you a good mystery. He gives you interesting characters. He gives you a strong sense of what it was like in the late 40s in Manila or San Francisco or Boston. So those are some people. I love Frances Crane and Craig Rice, who actually are both women, because they're hilarious. They write good mysteries, but they're very tongue in cheek. They have a great sense of humor, especially which one is it? Oh, Frances Crane has the Pat and Jean Abbott. They're a married couple, and he's a detective, and she owned a jewelry store, a silver jewelry store in New Mexico. And they go all over the country solving crimes with their dachshund. And at one point the cat, but somehow the cat disappears. And they're just really, they're funny. They have a great sense of humor. So I love those from that time period. As I said, you get a sense of the time, the people, the place. You feel as if you're there. And for modern mystery writers, I have to say I'm prejudiced in favor of some of the sisters in crime writers. I love Lisa Lieberman's books because again, they give you a good sense of place, whether it's Hungary during the revolution or Vietnam in the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, Italy in the early 50s. Interesting characters, and Leslie has some. Well, she was on here. You interviewed her a week or so ago, and she really does a wonderful job of capturing what Western Mass is like. You know, and as she said, she gets away from it's all Lenox or Stockbridge or Sturbridge, not Sturbridge, Stockbridge.
Stockbridge.
Yeah, I know. I always get those two mixed up, and they're pretty far apart. You know, you get a sense of the people living there, and you know how they've been sort of lost in time and space a little bit. So I would say those. Oh, one more person, and then I promise I'll shut up on this one. Scott Thomas, is it Thomas or Thompson? He's a modern writer of horror. It's sort of like if H.P. Lovecraft had Nathaniel Hawthorne's talent, that would be him. It's very, again, very haunting, very eerie, very unnerving, but beautifully written. And that's something I really like. If somebody writes well, gives you a sense of place, of time, atmosphere, that's something I really admire.
Now, would you prefer watching a 1940s film or a film today that takes place in the 1940s?
I would say it depends on what the film, which one.
You have, because obviously the 1940s films, they're mostly probably black and white, very little color. I know my daughter loves the older films and stuff, partly because of the black and white thing. Of course, then you have the colorized versions and stuff. But which would you prefer? But like you said, it depends.
It depends. I mean, one thing in some ways, I prefer the ones that really are older because I do like the cinematography with the black and white films. I find it a little bit more mysterious, a little bit more creative, a bit more suggestive. So in some ways, I prefer that. I do enjoy some things that are set in the 40s that are made now. But you know, sometimes I also just want to tear my hair out at crazy things that they, you know, have come up that, you know, like couldn't possibly have happened. You know, I've never seen anything as bad as somebody taking out a flip phone, but some things. Or I should tell you, this is kind of funny. My husband is from China. It is related. And he was watching some 40s, some films made at present that were set in the 40s. And he was saying there were these wonderful lines like the Japanese soldiers all wanted to go home. And one of the soldiers says, it's 1943, there's only 2 more years and then we can go home. So, or another guy saying, these people killed my grandfather when he was only 8 years old. So, you know, like little things that kind of make you go, wait a minute. So, but we have that here too.
So when did you start writing? When did you get the bug?
Well, the very first thing I remember writing was when I was 8 years old. And I had an older brother and he was always writing. So I wanted to be like my older brother. And so I started the story, and it was about a girl who was being followed by a vampire. And my spelling wasn't very good because it came out a grill that was being followed by a vampire. But and there's this one part where she gets on the bus and the vampire follows her onto the bus. And I remember later thinking, why did he follow her onto the bus? Couldn't he have just like turned into a bat and flown after her? But that was when I got the bug, so to or the bat, as it were.
Bat.
And I just, I've always enjoyed writing. I just kept going after that. Um, so I wrote a lot when I was in high school. I used to write for my friends, and um, I was at that point, I was what some people have called the pantser. I wrote by the seat of my pants at that point. So that's why they weren't that long. And, there was a lot that never got finished because I've run out of steam. But I used to write for my friends when I was in high school, and they used to get a kick out of it. And then in college, I was still doing that. And then I started getting that's when I started thinking, gee, I want to write something that's not just like Victoria Holt or one of those people. I love old movies. I think I want to write something that's like an old movie. So I got the idea for Bait and Switch, and I percolated in my head for a while. And then I wrote the first version of it when I was working on my master's thesis. So I would write my master's thesis during the day, go into work at Caldor at night for 4 to 6 hours, then come home and work on my novel till like 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, and then, rinse and repeat. And, that I finished when I was 24, and it went through many, many, many iterations. And I didn't publish it till 2015, so I was older. And so, but it was a good thing. It was a much better book than what I'd written when I was, only 24. I'd learned a lot. So, and then I've just always written, even when I hadn't published Bait and Switch, I still kept writing. So that's when I wrote another novel called Surprise, which is a mystery, and the sequel to the first sequel, Letter from a Dead Man, and then another novel called Redeeming Time, which is the Lovecraft horror noir romance. So some of those are still waiting for publication. And the thing is, I just always kept writing, even as I was sending something out. I'd still be working on the next one in the queue. So, in fact, I have novel number 4 finished, and I have ideas for 5 and 6 percolating up here.
Nice. We'll definitely get to those in a few minutes.
Oh, good.
So, like you mentioned, your first one was Letters from a Dead Man. So it's spring 1945. World War II may be crashing to a close, but Jessica and Liz Minton's
Wait. Bait and Switch is the first.
Bait and Switch. You're right. I clicked on the first. I clicked on the wrong one here. Hang on a minute here. Bait and Switch. That's the one.
Yeah.
So I've got like 3 different computers in here. So okay, well, set in wartime New York, Bait and Switch evokes the noir style of the 30s, 40s, and 50s mystery novels and films, with a leavening of humor and heart that keeps it from lapsing into noir bleakness. So your main character is
Jessica Minton. She's an actress, stage actress. She's, not a big star, but she's, successful enough that she has a decent roof over her head and she can keep her cat in friskies. But at the beginning of the novel, as it starts, she's had a really bad night in rehearsals, and things are about to get a lot crazier for her.
Well, I understand you have a little passage that you might want to read for us.
I do. So this takes place right after, it's the very beginning. She's had a horrible night in rehearsals. There's been a big fight between the director and another actor. And so they've gotten a break, and she's gone across the street to get a cup of coffee and something to eat from her, the guy who runs the drugstore. And he's a friend, and he's always telling her to take care of herself. And she doesn't eat enough when she's stressed out. And he's telling her, I'm going to take care of you in a minute. But he has to shoo off some kids who've been pawing through the movie magazines. And this is when things get interesting. Jess knew better than to argue with Harry, at least just now. So back to the coffee. Ugh, no sugar? Swell, the sugar canister next to her was empty. Even if there was a war on, did she have to be shortchanged on sugar tonight? Maybe the guy 2 seats down would pass her his sugar canister before her craving for sweet sent her off to mug a GI for his Hershey bar. Jess turned, started to speak, but hesitated. When she'd come in, she'd barely noticed the man behind his newspaper. However, her curiosity was now definitely piqued by his tense behavior, intermittently smoking, staring past her out the window, tensely glancing down one of the aisles off to his right, then stubbing out a cigarette and lighting another. Finally realizing he was being observed, he stared her down and demanded in a British accented voice, and I can't do a British accent, so imagine, "Haven't you ever seen anyone smoke before?" "I've seen people smoke before," Jessica replied, settling her elbow comfortably on the counter. He interrupted his nervous vigil to snuff out yet another cigarette and inquire sarcastically, "I imagine you've seen people extinguish cigarettes also." "Well, yes, but never in their food." He blinked, then stared into his plate, only now realizing that his mashed potatoes were gouged with cigarette butts. "That's your third," Jessica pointed out. She couldn't help noticing that the lean-faced gentleman was easy on the eyes in a bohemian kind of way. Tousled, longish dark hair and a mustache more full than Ronald Colman razored. Not that she was in the market with an equally dark and handsome Larry Sanders in the picture, which was her boyfriend. Her companion opened his mouth for a retort, but froze. As he caught sight of something outside, his expression erased Jessica's impishness. She straightened, then instinctively followed his gaze out the window. A car splashed by. Rain blurred the street lamp's illumination beyond the window. Jessica was slightly surprised to find herself relieved at not discovering anything fishy out there. But that relief evaporated as she sensed her companion was doing something to her coat on the chair between them. Turning back sharply, indignantly, Jessica started, "Say, just what the..." Her companion cut her off by leaning forward and tensely, quietly instructing, "There's no time for questions. Just do as I say. I've hidden a brown paper wrap package under your coat. After I'm gone, take it home with you. Try not to let anyone see you have it when you leave. If anyone does, convince him you came in with it. You're a clever girl. You can come up with a cover story." Jessica snapped, "How did you know I was clever? Anyway, I most certainly will do no such thing. Are you so truly concerned about not doing enough for your country? Or were those just empty words I heard coming from you a few moments ago, Miss Minton?" the man demanded. How do you know my name?" "Right here in front of me. I have the same section of the paper that you and your friend, the proprietor, were just talking about. And I'm not unfamiliar with your career. Now stop wasting time with questions and follow my instructions. Then you'll be doing the equivalent of thwarting a panzer division." He was on his feet, taking a cautious step past her, scouting through the window, trying not to be visible to anyone outside. And he seemed especially careful not to draw Harry's notice, who was completely wrapped up in giving what for to the gaggle of delinquent bobby soxers. Jessica protested softly, "I don't understand." Crazy as it all seemed, for this moment she was drawn into the stranger's determination to remain undetected. But by whom? Facing Jess again, he silenced her with his answer. "You don't have to understand. God forgive me for dragging you into this, but here we are. Take the package and sit tight until it's safe for me to retrieve it. I'll keep an eye on you, low profile, of course, but for your sake, my sake, our country's sakes, don't let anyone know what's passed between us. It's in your hands until it's safe for me to get it out of town." "It? What it?" "Just keep a low profile." Far from convinced, Jessica challenged the unnerving stranger. "Do you really expect me to buy this bill of goods? No soap, mister. If this were the real McCoy, why wouldn't you go to the police or the FBI? Haven't you heard of fivers, fifth columnists, traitors infiltrating the authorities? I'm on the run now because a German mole in this town liquidated my contact. I can't trust any of the regular authorities here. I need to leave this package with someone whom no one will suspect, but is easy for me to track down till I can find a way to get safely out of town. So if this city is so chock full of Nazis, what makes you think I'm such a good bet? Why trust me? His features tensed with frustration, fear even. The man's quick glance out the window, followed by his sharp reply, suggested that only his desperation to convince Jessica kept him talking rather than beating feet. Because my back's to the wall right now, and long shot that you are, you appear to be the only chance I have. I've got a pretty good idea of your patriotism from your conversation with the proprietor, so I'm placing all my bets on your being right enough to help me. Don't let me down. But someone is coming, and he doesn't look like my contact. Don't forget everything I told you. I'll be in touch. Wait, where are you going? She hissed after him. But his tall, wiry figure had moved rapidly into the maze of aisles leading to the rear of the store. Of course, out the back way. Wasn't that always the exit strategy for a mysterious man followed by Nazi agents? Jess was on her feet. What the devil should she do now? Of course, call the cops or the FBI, who would probably say she was nuts, or would they? Hadn't there been several high-profile roundups of German infiltrators over the past 2 years, even right here in the city? If she believed that fellow enough to call in the authorities, she'd also have to take his word that they couldn't be trusted, unless this was all some kind of practical joke in a horribly bad taste. That thought snapped Jessica Minton back to reality. Yes, the past 10 minutes struck her as something scripted for a bad spy melodrama, and she'd almost been suckered right into it. Someone had gone to great lengths to play her for a sap, even tapping into her predilection for drama on the dark side. Someone who had to know her well, the roles she played, the books she read, the movies she watched. Someone who also understood exactly how much she worried about not doing enough for the war effort. Someone like her brother-in-law, Peter Hennessy, a fellow all too well known as the king of grandiose practical jokes. But Peter usually had a motive. You'd done something to annoy him, set him off. As far as Jess could figure, her brother-in-law had no beef with her. Or was he nursing a grudge over her sticking up for her sister during some of the couple's numerous marital quarrels? Jess slowly sat down on her stool, speculatively eyeing her raincoat. Had her mystery man left a package lurking beneath it? Should she take a peek? Jess made a quick survey of the store. Nope, no Peter Hennessy or anyone else lurking in one of the aisles or behind a display to see if she'd taken the bait. She moved ever so slightly to check under her coat. And that's when the door slammed. There he stood with all the elegant lines of a fire plug in an old trench coat, his hat stained with rain, his face with a scowl, cigars clamped tight, and a hard mouth. A new actor in this Looney Tunes farce. The black eyes, guarded by folds of flesh, scanned the room with cruel precision, and Jessica was glad she'd had a chance to get a grip on herself before they fastened on her. His gaze detoured to the cigarette-marred mashed potatoes, then back to her. Teeth grinding down on his cigar, he seemed to be running through the evidence with an expression too harsh for a player and a practical joke. And that's where I'm going to stop. Did we lose Chris? Oh, there you
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. That's
yes.
stopping.
So as I had mentioned before you started reading there, that there's humor and heart that keeps it from lapsing into noir bleakness. So
Yeah.
for those who don't know, what is noir?
Well,
and how close do you get to it in your book without going over the edge?
Well, okay. Usually it's like people do a course in what is noir. Well, there's a film, and I guess you can apply it to some of the writing. There's a genre of film, and at the time, the filmmakers didn't really know they were creating noir. It wasn't until after many of the films had been made that a French film critic called it film noir. But people talk about maybe the first ones being The Maltese Falcon or Stranger on the Third Floor. And usually it's a film where your hero is kind of an anti-hero. He's looking for a truth. He's trying to find something, but he's an outsider. he's got his own code of ethics. He doesn't trust society. He can't really, and there's a good reason for it. Usually society around him is very corrupt. Um, you know, he could be egotistical. He could be, more concerned with just what he wants for himself. And you can kind of see that in Humphrey Bogart's character in The Maltese Falcon. But he often does have like his own code of ethics, like you don't betray your partner, or you may stab him, you don't stab him in the back, you may give him a few little pokes, but if somebody kills your partner, you straighten it out, you don't throw in with them. But there's a sense the world is not a place that you can really trust authority. There's a lot of corruption, whether it's politicians, whether it's a father figure or a boss or the police. It's, noir and black is a good word for it, because you don't know whom to trust. Women, they talk about the femme fatale who tries to lure men to their doom. She uses her sexuality to play on their ego and their lust to control them. She's usually much smarter than the men are. There may be sort of an innocent female in there, but she's usually kind of a wimp. But then there's also what I call the fast talking gal, or the smart talking gal, she's not a femme fatale, but she's not innocent. She knows the score. She's usually a secretary or a reporter, somebody who really knows the secrets, and she's been around the block. She doesn't trust too many people, but you can trust her. She's reliable. And often the hero has a problem because he doesn't know he can trust her, and he has a hard time sometimes distinguishing her from the femme fatale. So the imagery in it, there's a lot of shadows. Things seem to take place at night a lot. There's a lot of the shadows that you see, people come out of them or go into them and disappear, or they create bars or enclosures around people. It's kind of a bleak world, although, it isn't, sometimes it does reaffirm things, or at least it does, the bad guys don't necessarily get off the hook, but the good guys still don't necessarily win. And it, really became popular, really grew at the end of the war, because I think a lot of people were coming back from a war thinking, well, we saved the world from the Nazis, but let's see, what do we got? We have inflation, we have corruption in politics, we have police brutality, we have bigotry, we have a world that's, what the hell did we go to war for? So in fact, there are a lot of, there's sort of a subgenre of veterans who come back with amnesia and are trying to find themselves in this new world and trying to find out who they were before and who they are now. And it's, again, kind of like I think a metaphor for people coming out of the war. Who are we? Where are we going? What's going to happen? We want to make things better, but it's pretty damn difficult.
So a modern day equivalent would be something like maybe like Batman.
Yeah, there are a lot of noir elements in that, because you have a lot of shadows. You have
Kind of an anti-hero, not.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because he feels, because the hero could be kind of a vigilante. I was just watching a film called Cornered the other night with Dick Powell, where he's an RAF flyer who had been downed in France during the war and married a French girl. He was shipped back to Canada, injured, but when he got out of the hospital, he discovered his wife had been killed by the Nazis, and he goes back to France to find out who killed her, who gave the order. And then he's finding out there's a lot of corruption about the person. It was a French collaborator, and how the collaborator had connections with the Vichy regime and the Nazis to get out and go to South America. And he's tracking him down there. And it's again, he can't trust anybody. He can't turn to the police. He can't turn to the allied governments. He's almost completely on his own. So I think that's, again, the kind of thing you're talking about with Batman, that he's going in and he's avenging the crimes that the police can't handle, or the police are too corrupt to handle. So yeah, I think that it definitely draws on the noir.
So your second book, this one here, Letters from a Dead Man.
Yes.
Spring 1945, World War II may be crashing to a close, but Jessica and Liz Minton's hopes for the future are short-lived as they become entrapped in a, well, here we go, noir world of intrigue and murder. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about that, and I believe you have a little piece to read from that one as well.
Sure. Well, this is the sequel, obviously, to Bait and Switch, and Jessica is, she didn't get killed by Nazis, which is a good thing in the first book. Her sister is a major character in both books, her sister Liz. And it's kind of funny because I've modeled the relationship of Liz and Jessica on myself and my sister-in-law. And, we're both kind of sarcastic. We both trade barbs with each other. We both love each other a lot, but we always give each other a hard time. And I mean, if she wrote this book, the relationship might be a little bit different. But I mean, I kind of saw myself as the one who was a little more reasonable, and her as the more sort of passionate one, or the more temperamental one. So in this book, Liz is now running her own business. She's a dressmaker. And her partner, she's a partner who has a mysterious past, and Jessica doesn't trust him. Liz is willing to give him a chance, and there's a lot of stress over that, and a murder occurs, and stuff comes out about this guy's past that involves a upper class woman who herself may have kind of a sketchy past. And so Jessica and Liz have been warned off digging too deeply and trying to get this woman held responsible rather than somebody who's close to Jessica and Larry for the crime. So Jessica is, she thinks, she's like, oh, she's had a good evening out with her friend Iris and Iris's boyfriend. So they're about to get on the, he's going to take her home. They're going to go on the subway. And so things turn a little different. So they just they go down. It's like 1 a.m. They're getting on the subway. The door slammed shut behind her, but there was no time to waste checking if anyone was in pursuit. Because what has happened is she's seen somebody there that is connected with this dangerous woman, and she knows she's got to get off that subway car. As Jessica hit the stairs, she could hear racing footsteps on the platform. Then there was some kind of a crash. Please, God, let that buy me some time. The top of the stairs loomed above. Had Alana's boys been smart enough to post someone up there to catch her? No time to hesitate. She'd have to hold tight to her giant shoulder bag and come out swinging. Outside, the fresh evening air hit her at the same time she realized that no hoods lurked to grab her, but neither was there anyone to help her. Breathing raggedly, Jessica hurtled down 42nd Street, recognizing too late that she was actually moving away from her best source of help, Times Square. No time to double back past the underground entrance that might even now be disgorging her pursuers. A glance back, a movement in the darkness, in the shrubs of Bryant Park. She couldn't keep this pace up forever. The public library loomed monstrously on her right. Yes, the library. Putting on one more burst of speed, Jessica veered to her right onto Fifth Avenue, her eyes fastening on the nearest of the library's famous recumbent lion statues, its base cloaked in shadows. Another glance behind before the corner separated her from her pursuer's vision, and vice versa. Too hasty, nothing clear, and no cabs in sight to try and hop into. Jess scrambled up the lowest, broadest portion of the stone steps leading into the library, then sank into the darkness at the statue's base. A few quick, deep breaths were all she could afford before she could focus on making herself undetectable to the eye and the ear. All that mattered was melting into the shadows, Thank God she was wearing black, except for a white collar. Swiftly, her hand covered it. Footsteps came charging up and around the corner. Jessica couldn't even gulp. She could only make the deity 1,000 promises for spiritual reform to get her out of this jam. And there was one message from her heart sent straight to James. And that's it.
Sorry. So these are with Jessica being an up and coming actress,
Yes.
and so not a professional sleuth or detective or in law enforcement or anything. How close to a cozy does this get, or is it considered one?
Well, I don't know if it could exactly be. I think it would be more just amateur detective, because in cozies, I mean, we do have kind of a community, but I think cozies are a little more cozy, comfortable. I think this is a bit dark. I think this is a bit dark for a cozy, because there are a lot of people with very dark secrets that act in ways, outright ways, that are on the on the wrong side of nice behavior. I mean, we do have Nazis killing people. I mean, I know cozies do have people killed, but there's more violence. I mean, I don't think my stuff is super violent, but I think there is more violence in it, and there's more of a threat in it, and even the imagery is darker. I think my heroines are a little more acerbic than the heroines of cozies are. So I mean, she does have a cat and she drinks tea, and she does have a lot of friends. But I think I think it's not quite as comfortable as a cozy.
So it kind of fits in between cozy and noir.
Yeah, I guess so.
I do want to say that there was a comment. There's a comment
Yeah.
here on Facebook Live from Nicole Asselin, a fellow mystery writer.
Yeah.
She says the hat is everything.
Well, Jessica has hats in the stories, and I do describe them.
Yep.
One of the fun things is I do love to describe the outfits, and some people have said to me, "Oh, how did you get the idea for the outfits?" Well, I have a weird way of writing. I was first inspired by one of my favorite actresses is Joan Bennett, or she is my favorite actress, and I always thought I would love to write a movie for her. So when I used to go through my Joan Bennett scrapbook, and yes, I do have one, and I have a Claude Rains one while we're at it. I would look at the pictures, and my writer's brain always tried to come up with a story to go with the picture. So the outfits I see on people are really what I saw in the photograph or in a film. So, and like the sister, I also pictured her. If I cast my story, so Jessica, Joan Bennett, Liz, Rosalind Russell, who else? Iris, I don't know if people know Carol Landis. Jessica's boyfriend in the first story, Larry, I thought of a young Laurence Olivier when he was hot. I can't think of, there's lots of different ones. And the one that's coming out, one of the sort of villainous women is, I thought of Maureen O'Hara. And for Jessica's friend Rose, who is also draws on my best buddy, Kathy Healy, I thought of Barbara Stanwyck. So I do tend to cast them in parts. Oh, well, the two detectives in the second book, I thought of Fred McMurray as Leo Mclaughlin and Alan Ladd as Aaron Boyd. And I say, when I say Fred McMurray, it's not the nice old My Three Sons. It's the kind of sardonic guy you see in Double Indemnity, but not as corrupt, or Borderline, or Calloway Went That Away. So that's kind of how I get the idea for, and it helps me with the ideas of what the men are wearing too. Boy, I really went off on that one.
Well, no, because I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
how did you come up with the characters, the personalities, but the clothing and stuff?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's from your love of old films.
Yeah.
what about your settings and stuff? How'd you come up with the settings? Do you use real places, or do you use
Sure. Well, really, a lot of times, and I think a lot of writers know what I'm talking about. You go walk by someplace, or you're in some place, and you say, "Oh my God, this would be perfect for a story." So there's a really fun story about this thing I just read to you. Um, I wanted to make sure you actually could jump off a subway at that stop and run up the stairs and all the way past Bryant Park over to the Lions and hide behind them, one of them. So we did it. My husband and I went into New York. We go in a lot. We used to go in a lot anyway. So we went down and I got on the subway car. I heard the bell ring. I jumped off. I ran out along through the subway, up the stairs and all the way over to the Lion and hid behind it. And nobody said a word. Nobody noticed. So I acted it out. And my husband said, "Yeah, I was chasing you actually." Nobody noticed. But I guess it's New York, so who cares? And then always play the dark horse, which, will be, shall I say when it's released now? Because some people got mad. My friend Anita was teasing me for not saying.
Yep, absolutely. Go right ahead.
All right, it's supposed to come out. I'm told the end of August it will be released. That's what I've been told. So that's where it is in the queue. So the setting for that, it's a girls' college, a women's college on Long Island Sound on the Connecticut side. And I don't know if anybody knows the University of Connecticut, Avery Point, but there's a branch there at a place called Avery Point. And I would say in the turn of the century, the last century, not this one, it was an estate. It was a Branford estate, and there's a beautiful sort of mini chateau, not as big as the House on Dark Shadows, but still pretty big, called Branford House. And during the war, it actually was taken over by the Coast Guard, but it's since been taken over for University of Connecticut. And we were there. I was there for some conferences. There's a nice little art gallery on the second floor, and it's a beautiful, beautiful building. It's got this great wainscoting and carvings and a gorgeous great hall and a stone spiral staircase that goes up to the second floor. It's just a marvelous building. And I said, God, I've got to set something here. So that's how James Crawford ends up teaching at Margaret Point in the summer of 1946. And it just proved to be a perfect place for the setting. In fact, I'm going to try to do a blog. I have some photographs that on the outside, and I can't find the photographs of the inside, but they're there somewhere. So I'm going to do a blog so people can see that. But that's, those are some of the real places that, that inspired.
So
Yeah.
always play the dark horse.
Yes.
One foggy spring evening in 1946, a young college professor slips into a deserted campus building for a surreptitious meeting with her lover, only to be shot dead in the darkness. Who is the victim? Who is the murderer?
Yeah. Shall I do the little reading here?
You shall do the little reading. Go right ahead.
All right. And before I do this, I'm also going to point out that I did on my website, I have started a page for Always Play the Dark Horse. And there's a sneak peek of the prologue. So after this, if you go look at the prologue, you'll get an idea of that college professor who sneaks in there. This is a little bit later. There is an actual dark horse in this. And what's fun for me is I've always been a huge, as I say, improver of the breed. I've loved horse racing since 1966, and I watched my first Kentucky Derby in black and white on TV. My horse finished 11th, but that's another story. He did win the Belmont Stakes. So there's a beautiful black horse that is ridden by this veteran, and he's kind of mysterious, and he likes to ride him up and down the beach. And Jessica has gotten to be friends with this guy, even though a lot of people don't like him around. And what happens is one night, all of a sudden, the horse shows up at the place, the cottage that she and James are living in. And of course, Jessica is all alone that night. And it's very mysterious. The cinch has slipped on the horse's saddle, and Jessica is really concerned that, what has happened to this guy. So she decides, well, she tries to call, gets the phone book, nobody answers at his house. So she decides, well, I'm going to ride the horse back and see if I can find what happened. So she gets along the beach, she gets back there, and this is where I'm going to start. The barn didn't come into sight until Jess crested the rise aboard Blackie, who obviously is the horse. There it was, directly ahead, a small affair, only big enough for 1 or 2 stalls and storage of tack and feed. It stood a ways back, its door snugly closed. Jessica pulled up Blackie to take in the whole compound. The barn directly ahead with a little paddock and feed and water troughs, a small cottage, almost a shack to her right, much closer. Only 1 floor, a wood shingle roof and weathered clapboards. The roof extended over a wood-planked porch at the front. Light shone through the window, looking onto the porch and through the open front door. Open. Jessica scanned the flat area around her. Nothing, no one. No sounds but the tide. Not even insects. Still as a graveyard in the moonlight. Lousy metaphor, that. She started to call Phil's name, was the veteran, but stopped. If he was silent because he was unconscious, what was the use? That's the reason she kept her trap shut, she told herself. Jessica's eyes returned to the door, opening into the cottage. A quick glance at the barn again, back to the cottage. No, if she were injured, she'd aim for the house to collapse in. Besides, the barn was shut up. Okay, son, Jess said more quietly than she'd expected. Let's check things out. She urged Blackie over to the house at a walk. Her hesitation was only minuscule before she slipped out of the saddle and bobbled, thinking, phew, it's a long way down. It's a longer way down than I thought. Jess tied Blackie's reins to one of the porch supports that instructed him, don't you go anywhere. Blackie nuzzled her in moral support before Jessica turned and strode to the doorway. Leaning on the doorframe, she surveyed the one-room digs Phil Novak called home, hoping to find him within. No one. An overhead light shielded by a tin cone illuminated the room harshly. To Jessica's right, below the window, light also shone from a lamp on a wooden desk that had seen better days. Against the wall on the left was an old pot-bellied stove, a rocking chair before it. Directly across from the doorway was a bed, while to the far left was a kitchen area set off by a counter. A cast iron frying pan and sundry dishes and utensils were drying in a strainer next to the sink behind the counter, another window over the sink. The icebox and stove were to the right of the sink, beyond them a cupboard or a wardrobe. On the far wall of the cabin, an open door revealed part of a claw-footed tub. At least Phil had indoor plumbing. The floors of the cabin had once been snugly planked, but weathering had warped them. Rugs were scattered about to keep out drafts. Phil hadn't been so lucky with the sand tractor blown in. Yep, every light in the place was on, but no one was home. Something was really off here. Jess cast a glance at Blackie, who seemed at ease. That reassured her a little. So what now? With no Phil Novak in sight and his house looking like something left behind by the lost colonists of Roanoke Island? She hadn't found an injured Phil between here and her place, so he probably wasn't hurt, at least by being thrown. With no sign of a struggle in here, Jessica didn't think he'd been carried off by Zoderstrock's crew, and this is, once again, we've got fifth columnist lurking. Maybe he'd left a note behind somewhere? Jess stepped into the room, automatically closing the door behind her and calling, Phil, Mr. Novak, are you here? Are you hurt? Nothing. Funny, somehow calling out made her feel less of an intruder. Jessica found herself next to the desk strewn with papers and open envelopes. Her hand went forward, but she stopped. Snooping into a guy's mail was intrusive, but definitely. Wasn't it also a federal offense? Anyway, she'd probably just mess up clues that James would need to look into. She'd certainly revealed that someone had been poking around Novak's stuff. Yet wasn't this a prime opportunity to look for that special package Phil was holding for Zodestruck? A package you wouldn't recognize if you fell over it. Maybe Phil was even now handing his secret what's-it over to that Nazi rat, leaving his door open, his lights blazing, and his horse running wild while he did it? None of this added up. Maybe she should stop looking for deep, dark secrets and concentrate on the most down-to-earth explanation. Phil had gone off in search of Blackie after the horse had somehow gotten away. As much as she thought she knew what went on between Phil and the horse, she could have been dead wrong. Blackie could have been spooked by a passing car on that lonely road and taken off. Maybe the smart move would be to leave Phil a note that she had his horse. Her decision made, Jess grabbed the pen off the desk, scanning for a piece of blank paper. Nothing. She'd have to write on the back of one of these envelopes, which gave her the perfect excuse to check them and see they were just a bunch of bills and something from the VA. Darn. Well, wouldn't you know it, this pen wouldn't write. Damp sea air. Perfect excuse to open one of the drawers and look for another. But Jessica didn't. Someone knowing she'd only left a note here was one thing, but evidence of her poking through this dark desk suggested she'd been sticking her nose where it didn't belong. Jess scowled, glancing up at the wall above the desk for the first time, noticing the pictures tacked there. A few of shipmates, filled with a guy resembling him holding the head of a horse in the winner's circle at Rockingham Park. The horse wasn't Blackie, though. Phil was a lot younger and a lot happier. The picture had been taken 11 years ago, long before his brother had died, before a world war had shot a ship out from under him, before he'd gotten mixed up with this prize bunch. Phil had caught more than his share of tough breaks. What was he catching right now? Jessica paced across the room, thinking hard what to do. Too bad one of those pictures hadn't been signed, "Thanks for being such a swell henchman. Your pal, Georg Zodestruck." She was standing next to the counter now, tapping her fingers. Stay or go. If Phil had been hurt in a riding accident, she'd have found him. Who knew when he'd be back or if he'd be back alone? Then again, could he be in the barn? No, that made no sense. He'd hardly have shooed off Blackie, then locked himself in there. But someone could have driven off the horse and taken care of Phil in the barn. Blackie was snorting and pawing outside. He even let out a nervous whinny. Phil? No, Blackie wouldn't have sounded so rattled, so defensive. Good grief. Maybe whoever approached was no friend at all. And here I am in a big open room with no back door. Blackie was really antsy now, but at this angle, Jessica couldn't see why through the window over the desk. Could she duck into the bathroom? No time. The counter, only the counter. Scowling at the hand dealt her, Jessica dashed behind the counter, barely pausing to grab the cast iron skillet. Girl never knew when denting a Nazi noggin might become imperative. Crouching behind the counter, she gnawed her lip and prayed that the Gene Krupa drum solo her heart was pounding out couldn't be heard by anyone but herself. What she wouldn't have given to tuck herself neatly into the cabinets under the counter, but no reducing plan could do that trick. What was she going to do? The invader had only to round the corner and she'd be sunk. Why hadn't she sat tight at home and waited for James? Why did she have to be such a 14-carat do-gooding sap? That was when Jess noticed that Blackie had settled down. Had Georgie boy slipped him a lump of sugar with a Mickey fin? Shouldn't the unnamed visitor have reached the door by now? What was he waiting for? Something was fishy. Jess gripped her frying pan, almost wishing it were all over. Jessica, you know I can see you right through this window. And that's where I'm leaving you.
So before I go any further, I forgot to, I wanted to mention earlier
Yes.
that when we were talking about the characteristics of Jessica and Liz and some of your characters and how you came,
Yeah.
you have a pillow with a picture of Jessica on it, don't you?
Well, it's actually Joan Bennett.
Oh, okay.
But
it kind of like, it looks like Jessica though on your first book cover.
yeah, well, Joan inspired Jessica, so we didn't exactly take Joan's face. We actually took that one as a generic face and we made the hair longer. And from the neck down, it's me, actually. Yeah, my husband copied that. And my husband does all my covers. The next two covers, we kind of adapted a picture of Joan, and we changed the face a little bit so her family wouldn't sue me or whatever. I don't think they would really, but that's the character. Yeah. So especially films like The Man I Married, House Across the Bay, and The Scar, where she's a very Jessica is like Joan, a smart talking gal. She knows stuff. She's maybe a little more innocent than some of the smart talking gals. She changes. I think she grows up a lot through the books. She becomes a little more mature, I think she becomes more confident. She becomes smarter about some stuff. She gets, we have thunder here.
Yeah, I got it right here too. So
yeah, my cats have disappeared.
Not that far away.
Yeah. But she, I think she grows up a lot through the book. She starts at 28. So by the next one, she's 30. Let's see now, 46, so she's 31. Yeah, there's one part where James comments, oh, you're only 32. And she says, I'm 31. So she kind of sets it straight on that one. But I did base her a lot on the kind of roles that Joan used to play.
Now, some authors and even script writers for movies and stuff, the names that they come up with for the characters have significance. So, for example, the movie Demolition Man, which came out like 20 some odd years ago with Sylvester Stallone and Sandra Bullock. Yeah. Sandra Bullock, it's dystopian. It's kind of like a Brave New World. And in fact, Sandra Bullock's character's name is Lenina Huxley. And I found out from researching it that Lenina is the main character in A Brave New World. And Huxley, Aldous Huxley, who was the author of the book. So they named her Lenina Huxley. How did you come up with the names for your characters? And I wish my video would finally work. There we go. How'd you come up with the names of the characters, and did they have any significance?
All right, some of them more than others. Like, I always liked the name Jessica. I thought Joan Bennett looked like a Jessica. And then I was just looking through names in a catalog from the University of Lowell, and there was a professor whose last name was Minton, and I thought, I like that name. So that's where that came from. Her sister Liz, she started out as Margaret, and then I thought, well, no, then they'd be calling her Peggy, and she's not a Peggy, but I liked Elizabeth. And it took me, I did, for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why I put the names Elizabeth and Margaret together. And then a friend of mine said, well, yeah, that's the Queen of England and her sister. So I guess that was in the back of my head. But let me see. Leo Mclaughlin, I noticed in the second novel, I noticed a lot of guys who were young men in the 40s were named Leo, my father included. So I thought, I think this would be a good name for him. And I like the sound of Mclaughlin. There's a character in that novel and in the third one named Jeff Hooley, and he's with the FBI. And I pictured him like David Duchovny. Now, why Hooley? Well, I think he looks like a Jeff. And then I thought, well, the Chinese word for fox is Hooli. So I thought of Fox Mulder, so he became Jeff Hooley. So some of the names have significance. I'm trying to think of any of the others. As well, Walter Castle. I was thinking of Walter Koenig, the actor, for being Walter Castle, and Koenig means castle. So some of them, there are in jokes with the name. Some of them I just like the sound of the name, and some of them sort of connected with the person I thought might be playing them. There's a woman in this in the third novel, Always Play the Dark Horse, named Carolina, and it became part of a joke because at one point Jessica says, I can't remember, she's either Virginia from Maryland or Maryland from Virginia, and James says, or maybe her name's Carolina, name or place. And so then it turns out that really is her name. So, and she's from Virginia. So
So when you developed your characters, when you developed the story and your characters, were there characters minor characters
Yeah.
that you just absolutely loved the way you wrote them and turned them into more of a major character as you went on, with book 2, 3, now 4, 5 are in your head. And then vice versa, where there's some major characters and you're like, you know what, I really don't like this character anymore. I'm going to kill him off.
Well, I have to be careful because if I tell you I kill off, then people who haven't read that book will um, will know he gets killed. Oops, or she.
Or she.
But yeah, I mean that happens. I mean, there was one character in one of the 4 books, and I won't tell you which. I really wanted that person. I intended that person to stay a bad guy and was going to get killed at the end, but that person just wouldn't stay bad, and I just kind of said to me, "No, I'm not really that as bad as you're making me out to be, and I'm not going to die." So, what could I do? But yeah, and some of the other characters, like in the first book, Jessica has a friend, Iris Rossetti, and she was a minor character. But in the second book, which is more like sort of, how would I call it? A buddy, a girl's buddy, a women's buddy story. Jessica and her sister, and then Jessica's friends, Iris Rossetti and Lois Wong. They become more important in it, so they carry on. They develop more from the second one, from the first one. And then Jessica has another friend, Rose Nyquist, who's a teacher at a college on Long Island Sound in Connecticut. Jessica teaches with her. She does on Saturday morning. She does some work with sort of underprivileged girls, teaching them, about reading stuff and literature and having fun. And so she and Rose do that together. And so in the third book, they're going to Rose's college, and Rose becomes an important person in helping Jessica deal with what's going on in the story, and helping her solve the mystery and providing important support. And then in the second book, Jessica also moves from working on the stage to becoming sort of the star of a radio program. I started doing research on radio programs in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and I became fascinated with it. And then I started listening to the programs, because you can buy DVDs with the programs, or you can listen to them on YouTube, and they're really great. They're a lot of fun, and like Suspense and Lights Out and Inner Sanctum, great shows. And so I thought it would be really fun to have Jessica be the star of one of these, so that she starts out with that in book 2. She's on hiatus in book 3, but then when we get to book 4, it's the radio program. They go to this kind of haunted mansion in New Hampshire to do it was going to be Maine, but there was the state burned down in 1947, so couldn't do that. Major forest fires. So they're doing a remote broadcast from there. So that becomes the major focus, the radio program, and the characters who are part of that program, the director and some of the other actors become major players in book 4. But book 4 is way down the line before it comes out. So
Have you gotten feedback from fans or readers that a particular character is they hate the character, they detest the character, whiny or just annoying, or just, but they want more of that character because of that?
well, let me think. I got protests from people for killing off somebody. I got into a lot of trouble for killing off somebody. I'm trying to think of who, it seems to me there was somebody people didn't like. Who was it now? Darn it. More it's been people got mad at me, not mad at me, but they didn't want me to kill off somebody, or they were really sorry to see someone get killed, or they were sorry to see that somebody was not what he or she was supposed to be. But I don't know if anybody who's listening has read and can think of, please bring it up. You can bring it up now.
So way back at the beginning, you were talking about when you first started writing that you were more of a pantser. So you just kind of wrote and wrote and wrote. Do you still have that style, or do you do more plotting and outlines and stuff?
I when I started writing more seriously, I became an outliner. So when I did bait and switch the very beginning, so that would be my moving out of um, moving into my 20s, moving out of college. That's when I really started doing the outlines because I needed to know where I was going. If I didn't know where I was going, it could just sort of peter out on me and I would lose inspiration. So I would always do outlines. And that doesn't mean that, sometimes things that are in the outline don't make it to the final text. I might say, oh, this doesn't really work. Excuse me, I've got too much in here. The book's too long. I've got to cut this. Or sometimes, but it gives me the freedom to move stuff around. It's a lot easier to move stuff around if it's in the outline. So I just move parts of the outline around and it makes it easier to maybe cut or, cut out parts that are in the outline. So it's easier to do for me to know where I'm going before. So I really am an outliner.
When you first started with bait and switch and you started to do more serious writing,
Yeah.
There's a lot of groups out there like Mystery Writers of America, Sisters in Crime, which I want to give a shout out to Sisters in Crime New England for introducing us. You've been in the store and a couple of the events that we hosted that Sisters in Crime does. How much influence when did you join them? Did you join them right away, a little after? How much influence did they have? Suggestions? What other groups were you a part of that helped you in your process of bettering your writing?
Well, early on, I basically it was mostly on my own. Or I had a lot of friends who liked to read what I had to write. So, and I would ask them for feedback. And I'm very fortunate that I have friends who are honest. So I get a lot of feedback from a circle of people that I went to school with, or that I was, that I knew as friends otherwise. I got some feedback when I was in grad school from some people, some professors who just were interested in what I was doing. But I joined Sisters in Crime around the time, I think it was right after I published Bait and Switch. And I think it was my friend Ruth who had told me about Sisters in Crime. And I was looking at what they did and I thought, well, this is wonderful. I love the possibility of the speakers program. They give me a chance to get information out about myself to the public. And so, and I've made a lot of connections with people. I've made a lot of very good friends. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of good reading through my connection with Sisters in Crime. I'm now a member at large for Massachusetts. So I try to be that kind of person too, to get the word out and we have member reads sometimes, which are a lot of fun and I get good feedback there. And, I try to give back too. I've been, I guess they call it now, a beta reader. So that's hard to say when you're from Massachusetts because it comes out beta reader. But, I don't know. New Hampshire, do you do that too?
Beta reader.
Yeah. Beta reader.
Bader. We throw an R on the end.
But I've ended up doing a lot of that, some for my fellow sisters, and then some for other people who I know are writers who, they just wanted, to hear from me. So, or, they wanted some feedback. But I think I love Sisters in Crime. I urge people to join. It offers so many opportunities to connect with other writers, to do this kind of program I'm doing with you now, to do the speakers panel, to learn about, writing and promotion and advertising, all kinds of stuff that are important for writers to know. I can't say enough good stuff about it.
And the pandemic has definitely been a detriment to a lot of the group activities and get-togethers and stuff. However, the plus side of that, or the silver lining side of that, is you get to see, or people across the country get to see this,
Yeah,
get to join in conversations and meet new people that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to get to in person.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's something that I think is really good, because again, I did a panel with you. I've done panels with some other people, and it was great. I got to connect with people, as you said, from across the country. I know one of my friends, my friend Anita, who is in DC, not DC, she's in Virginia. She was able to come to this and hear what we're talking about, and now she won't be mad at me about telling her, making her wait to find out when the book's coming out. So yeah, I mean, it's wonderful. I think it's great.
So when you started writing Bait and Switch, and we're talking about beta readers,
Yeah.
were any of you pass it around to some of your colleagues and stuff to have them take a look at it? Did you ever get it to any of your students to take a look at and to read
Uh,
and get feedback?
right. Well, when I first wrote it, I didn't have any students. I was working on my master's, and I was, I was in grad school, and I was also working part-time. Um, I never did that because I kind of felt it would be an awful lot of pressure to give a student your work and then ask them to comment on it. You can see them saying, well, how's my grade going to be affected by this kind of thing? But let me see. After after they, I'm trying to think if any of my friends, because I'm friends with students now. Well, one of my former students, at least one of my former students, became a beta reader for me, and she's been really giving me good stuff to say. She made a really good comment about one of the first drafts of Dark Horse. There's one part where James admits something to Jessica, and she's very angry with him, and she says, "You're sleeping on the couch tonight." And she said, she's really too hard on him. I mean, give the poor guy a break. Even the cat won't go over to him. So I changed the theme. My husband said, yeah, she's mean to him. So I said, okay. The two of you are doing that. I guess we got to change this. So when you read it, you'll see she's much, much nicer to him. But she still lets him know he's in trouble.
So when you're all done, you got your manuscript done, and you're now starting the editing process. How many edits do you usually go through on average before you hand it off? Well, let me ask this first. I was going to look this up before, and I always forget to do this. Are you self-published, or are you traditionally published?
I'm traditionally published. I published with a small independent press called Touchpoint Press, and I was so happy, that they gave me a shot, and they treat me very well. They love my husband doing the covers. Well, I guess it saves them a little money too. But also, it gives me that freedom. They let me write the kind of writing I want to do. They don't say, oh, you have to follow this formula. So I really like working with them. And I know some friends who, my friend Kate Zabrowski, I urged her to send there, and I think I put in a good word for her. There are a few people I've gotten to get published with them. So, I think very highly of them. But how many drafts? Oh God. Well, I mean, let's see. We'll talk about this one. This not letter from a dead man. Always play the dark horse. I wrote a handwritten draft over maybe 2 summers. I couldn't write when I was teaching because I just don't have the time or the energy. I have to really compartmentalize. So I wrote that over 2 summers, and then I typed it the next summer. I typed it into my computer, so that's a new draft. And then I must have gone through a few drafts. Well, I let other people read it, and I made some revisions. So, and then finally, probably, it went through at least 3 drafts before I sent it to my editor. And my editor looked at it, and she actually didn't make a lot of changes. You know, there were just, we had our philosophical difference over, do you add just an apostrophe or an apostrophe S to singular, to a name that ends in S. So she said, it's your baby, you can do it the way you want. But it was mostly just nothing in the plot or anything like that. And then I also went over it again just to see if there was something, if I could, shorten it or smooth it out. And then I caught some like really bizarre continuity things, like at the beginning of the story, there's a stereo radio console on the left side of the room, and then halfway through it's on the right side. So I thought, well, gee, I don't feel like writing that Jane's got a hernia moving it, so I'll just change it on in the beginning so it's where it should be. But so I go through a lot of drafts. I mean, I would say easily 5 or 6 drafts before it's finally published. And I would say I must go through, at least 4 drafts before I send it to my editor. And I think that's one of the reasons she doesn't have to do too much with it, because I really put a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears in to get it into shape. And I do listen to, I always call them my posse. I have my friends, Ruth, Amber, who else? My husband, I'm leaving, Judy and Kathy. So, and Kathy, of course, loves this one because she's an inspiration for the character of Rose. So yeah.
So when it's about,
go ahead.
Go ahead, finish.
No,
go ahead and finish.
I don't remember what I was going to say now. Must have been a while.
Well, what I was going to say was, when it's all said and done and it's out and published, what are some of the things now that you do to market it?
Oh, wow. Well, I have a newsletter, that I send around. I have on Facebook, I put out things on LinkedIn. I also, there are some places you can go to, like the Fussy Librarian or eSoda Book, I think it's called. There are a few online places that will push your book, and that does cost some money, but I sort of justify it by saying, well, what I earn when I do a talk, that pays for it. So if I earn something other than just selling the books, I sort of say, well, it balances it out. I also go to libraries, contact libraries, and make arrangements to do a reading and a signing. I go to bookstores and do that. Let me see, what else do I do? Oh, we have postcards and with the little QR thing on it, and bookmarks, which, if I'm in a coffee shop or a cafe or a tea room or a books, any place that I think people want to read, I see if I can post it. And it's, it's amazing that, sometimes you do get some hits that way. I'm trying to think of what else I do. Harass my relatives, but I don't always want to buy it.
Well, you have a very detailed, involved website, SharonHealy-Yang.com. But you have your appearances and events, your about your books, about you, your blogs, other interviews and stuff. How important do you think that is? Obviously, you must feel that having a website and all this extra stuff on there is very important.
Yeah, well, and I forgot, I do, like, I'm doing an interview with you. I've done interviews with other people online or for reading groups. I think, I think it's very important. I mean, that's how you've got to get the word out. You can't just sit and expect people to pick up your book or, look at a review on Amazon. Well, I do try to get people to also do a review for me on Amazon or Goodreads, because I think that could draw some attention. But you know, I actually kind of enjoy it. I mean, there are times when I get a little stressed out, but on the whole, I enjoy it because it's a way of, you know, connecting with people, and I can be creative, like you were saying. I have kind of an elaborate, well, not elaborate, but a detailed. I love doing the website. I think it's a lot of fun, and I have other things on there, which partly is, yes, it's my nefarious way of luring people in by having stuff on great tea rooms to go to, or mystery writers of the classic era, or modern writers who write in the classic era style. You know, it's and the guest blogs. I like to do the guest blogs because I think it gives other people a chance to talk about their writing and their books, but then their friends are going to look at this and maybe they'll say, oh, gee, her books look kind of interesting too. So, you know, I actually enjoy doing that kind of stuff. And now that I'm retired, I have more time. So I'm afraid people will probably be sick of me.
One thing I noticed on your website, and I'm extremely appreciative of this, as are probably the rest of the bookstores are as well. But you do mention, put our links to
Yeah.
mention our the bookstores that your books are in,
Yes.
where they're located, the links to their websites, and I really wish more authors would do that. You know, we understand the evil river and the necessity of that. Um, but you know, definitely appreciate the you know, having us mentioned, or at least
Yeah.
that go to your independent
Yeah.
bookstore to order it. Bookshop.org, use that, or even indiebound.org, where you can search for the bookstore nearest you. It's
Yep.
really appreciated when writers put those on their websites or social media.
Well, it's our play. I mean, I'm not, you know, it tells people where they can get my book. I mean, so, you know, it benefits me, but also I feel like, you know, we should all help one another. If I can help somebody, I want to help them, you know, and it doesn't cost me anything. So, you know, why not? You know, and why not get more people in there? You know, so
Yeah.
I that's important. And I want to support independent bookstores.
Well, thank you. And again, we appreciate it. So we're a little bit over, which is fine. I do have one more question, which may
Okay.
actually lead to one more. But any ideas on audiobooks for any of your books?
Well, apparently the first one is an audiobook. It's on Audible. So I haven't heard it because I would like to hear it, but I didn't get, you know, I know you get, you know, authors often get, you know, the e-copy, and obviously they get the hard copy of the book, but Audible doesn't send the author a link or whatever. And I realize you have to pay like $15 a month for Audible. And I just don't want to shell out that. I'm cheap. I just don't want to shell out that much money. But I would love to hear it if somebody has it.
Well,
I'll give you
when
15 bucks. I'll give you 15.
when you can, because I
Yeah.
don't know how you go through it, if it's through your publisher or if you did it
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Libro.fm is the audiobook company that we partner with for audiobooks. And they send us a selection of free downloads. Of bookstore owners and their employees can get them to review and obviously promote and stuff. They do it with libraries, they do it with
Oh,
schools too. So I would think they would do it with authors, or at least give you a courtesy copy of your book. That would be something to check out. But there is an author section that you can go to. You just go all the way down to the bottom of their homepage there, and you
yeah.
should be able to find it. But you know, we get a portion of sales, so it's been really nice. Their platform is fantastic, and more
Okay.
people are making the switch from Audible, which is the other person's um, thing, to to Libro. So that's something to check out there. Now, if you had the choice, so this will be the final question. If you had the choice to pick any actor and or actress to play the voices of your characters, who would they be?
Oh, jeepers crow.
And
It
you name so many 40s and 50s um, movie stars and TV stars and stuff, who would really fit your characters?
Could it be, does it have to be someone living or could it be?
No, anybody.
Oh, well, I definitely would have, excuse me, Joan Bennett do Jessica and Rosalind Russell do Liz. Let me see. I'm not sure who I had do James Crawford. I don't know if Ronald Coleman sounds a little too sophisticated. Um, hmm. And let me see. Yeah, I mean, for me, because I've cast the part, so, I'm thinking in this one, always play the dark horse. I think of David Selby, who we have a lot of friends, who are old Dark Shadows fans. So it was Quentin on Dark Shadows. I would have him voice Terry Clark, and Patrick Stewart do Georg. And let me see. Who else did I say? I said Barbara Stanwyck for Rose, and Maureen O'Hara for Carolina, and Nigel Patrick, who is you see him in a lot of Canadian stuff. The best thing I remember him for was playing Lacroix on Forever Night. I would have him do Nigel Cross's voice. So let me see who else. I don't know who I'd have do the horse or Dusty.
Mr. Ed?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, I was awful because at one point somebody makes a joke. Well, no one's ever heard of a talking horse. The other person says, well, of course, of course. And so that's an Easter egg in there. So if you catch that, yes, I did that on purpose.
Well, and with that, we're going to call it a night. So the Jessica Minton Mysteries, the Bait and Switch, Letter from a Dead Man, and Always Play the Dark Horse coming out in August.
Yes.
The first two are in store, signed copies. You can get them from us. We'll have the third one as soon as it's available. You can also go to bookshop.org if you like. They won't be signed copies, but there'll be copies anyways, and go through our link to Bookshop, and you'll be helping to support our store. Go to your local bookstore too. Definitely help them out, support them. We can still use it. It's been a rough year for bookstores across the country. We're looking forward to hopefully someday having you on Libro FM so we can promote your audiobook that way as well. And of course, Sharon Healy-Yang.com for all those wonderful little tidbits that she has on her website. Everybody on Zoom, everybody on Facebook, thank you very much for joining us. Sharon, thank you very much for being a part of our series.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me.
And
for showing up.
yeah, we have two more events. We have one more tomorrow night, and then we have our final one on Saturday. So we hope that some of you, if not all of you, will join us there. Thank you, everybody, and you all have a good night.
Thank you.